Has confirmed a new trade deal struck with the United States following a phone call between President Donald Trump and President Xi Jinping. The agreement marks a delicate truce in the ongoing trade war between the world's two largest economies. China's foreign ministry says both sides must now stick to the consensus. Spokesperson Lin Jian stressed that China has always kept its word and delivered results. Let's listen in to what the Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Lin Jian has had to say.
强调，本次会议是在两国元首的战略指引下举行的，双方就落实两国元首6月5日通话重要共识和巩固日内瓦经贸会谈成果的措施框架达成原则一致，就解决双方彼此经贸关切。 中方一向言必行，行必果。既然达成了共识，双方都应遵守。希望美方同中方一道，落实两国元首通话达成的重要共识，发挥中美经贸磋商机制作用，通过沟通对话，增进共识，减少误解，加强合作。
Well, the Trump-Xi phone call has broke a deadlock that had escalated just weeks after a preliminary deal was reached in Geneva. Follow-up talks in London have helped add substance to that agreement. China has also announced a new envoy for Eurasian affairs as diplomatic efforts intensify. Meanwhile, China's Commerce Ministry says it will continue to speed up approvals for rare earth exports, a key move amid global supply pressures. Beijing hopes Washington will now work together to implement what both leaders have agreed to. Well, joining us to discuss this news update that we have had, confirmation of a deal struck between the United States and China, is Stephen Nagy, an Indo-Pacific area expert who is joining us from Tokyo. Stephen, thank you ever so much for being here. Of course, confirmation of this deal will have ramifications for both the US and China, but given Trump's tariff policy and his tariff action, how significant is this to the wider world?
Well, I think the wider world is definitely relieved that the two parties have come and met in London and have initially at least agreed to a framework of a cessation in the trade frictions that is happening between the two, and that they may be coming to an agreement is of great relief to countries that really can't separate their economies from the United States and China. And here I'm thinking about South Korea, Japan, and many other countries that really both partners are incredibly important for their economic stability and prosperity. At the same hand, I think many countries are looking at the negotiations as likely the first stage or the first act in a multiple act play in which both parties cheat, both parties accuse each other of cheating, and at the end of the day, one will backtrack or one will argue that the other is not fulfilling their obligations. So I think there's some relief, but looking at past behavior by both the Trump administration and the Chinese, I think most are expecting that this will only be a temporary pause in trade friction, and we're likely to see more trade friction from here on in.
Yes, Stephen, let's build briefly on that friction that you've spoken about. Of course, a framework was agreed to in Geneva, Switzerland, where days of negotiations took place, and we saw a tariff reduction from that triple-digit reciprocal tariffs that had been escalated to. Is there a risk here that there will be potential calls of violations of this deal? And how quickly do you think that these tensions could break this deal apart, given the differences that both nations have, not just in terms of trade policy, but also on other geopolitical issues?
Well, frankly, both sides have incentive to come to some kind of agreement and reduce tariffs and create access to rare earth materials that are essential for most of the high-tech equipment that we use in the United States or Canada, where I'm from, or other parts of the world. So again, I think that's really important. From the Chinese side, they're very, very concerned that the tariffs will continue and it will have a double punch of their economy. The tariffs have decreased exports by about 35% in China, and that means those millions and millions of workers on the East Coast that are producing goods for global export may be losing their jobs. When they lose their jobs, they're not bringing that capital back to their hometowns during Chinese New Year and helping with the development of their hometowns. So it's a double punch on their economy. On the US side, of course, we haven't seen an effects on inflation yet, but businesses are generally growing insecure about the tensions in the tariff policy, which seems erratic from many different quarters. So I think there's definite incentive to find some kind of stability. But again, the geopolitical competition between these two states and the technological competition is still deepening, and we're likely to see again things like territorial disputes, things like human rights issues, things like who is and what technologies are being allowed into China from the United States and allies to resurface as areas of wedge politics that are going to create problems for, I think, really pushing this trade agreement into reality for the long term.
Yes, and Stephen, to bring an end to this discussion, rare earth minerals is something that has been spoken about by both China and the United States. A key point of contention, the Chinese Foreign Ministry confirming that they will fast-track approvals for the sale of these rare earth minerals. For our audience, can you provide some context on why this is such an important part of these discussions and deal that's been agreed to?
Well, China basically has monopolized rare earth supply. So they have about 60% of global rare earth supplies, and they are involved in about 90% of the processing of rare earth materials. Now, rare earth materials are they're not so rare, but the processing process is a little bit difficult, and few countries do it cheaply well. And what we think is that this rare earth material that goes into these super sophisticated semiconductors that go into our cars, our Teslas, our iPhones, our computers. So with China being able to monopolize these rare earth supplies and the processing, either cut off the processing and export or slow it down, it fundamentally affects our ability to increase production of these key technologies to compete in the areas of AI that require these key semiconductors that use rare earth materials. So they are in the driver's seat. They've invested heavily in monopolizing rare earth materials, and we are likely to see this rare earth material card surface again. But at the same time, you use that card once, it's more difficult to use it twice. And this is what we saw back in 2010 when the Chinese used rare earth embargoes against Japan. Japan found alternative sources for rare earths. They reduced their exposure to Chinese rare earth material processing, and this has allowed to given them more space to manage the monopoly that China has. So again, you play this card once, you're going to have declining benefit the second and third time around.
Stephen Nagy, thank you ever so much for